Hello, everybody, and welcome to Put That on My List, the show where someone comes in with the movie and the questions. My name is Trey Jones.
My name is Spencer Lane.
Yeah.
And I'm Angela Nappy.
Hello, Angela.
Hi.
So you brought us in an interesting movie today for our second episode. Do you want to do the intro for it?
So the name of it is the Beatles' Yellow Submarine animated film from 1968, to get technical and niche. Essentially, it's just a giant playlist or soundtrack of like the Yellow Submarine album and some songs from the Revolver album, thrown into like this really weird, like psychedelic Beatles movie. And it was kind of like newer for the Beatles' time at that point. So
Yeah. Well, all right. Spencer, you got anything else? I know you saw this before.
I have backstory, really. This was my favorite movie when I was a very young child. I had it on VHS, was a yellow VHS. I'm pretty sure. That was, if I'm like 17 years ago now. So, yellow VHS of Yellow Submarine was very good. I remember, didn't remember much, but it was an integral part of my life.
And I watched it 3 hours ago. So
nice.
There we go.
Oh, I have it on
Nice and
Blu-ray.
fresh.
I got it for my birthday
nice.
on Blu-ray. It was like my 19th, 18th birthday. So that was a few years ago too. But
Yeah, because they were like coming out with reprints of it for some reason.
Yes, and I have socks.
Yeah.
I
As
got
you should.
socks for my 15th birthday. I kept them in the box though because I didn't want to wear them down.
Yeah.
Was it that Happy Sock company?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you have the socks?
I have a box of 3 that I got for Christmas one year. It
Wow.
has them in the submarine, the weird fish scene, and then
Oh,
some
the
like
fish.
psychedelic flowers.
I like the little characters like the sycophant and all that.
Oh,
Yeah.
They were cool.
Well, seeing as Ange here's our guest, would you like to start us off with some questions?
Sure. Well, my first is, how much involvement do you think the Beatles had with that movie?
I may have researched a little
Oh,
after the
okay.
fact, so
We're supposed to
I'm going to
research.
let you didn't have to. I'm going to let you answer it before I say.
Well, I know they didn't do the voices of the guys, which fooled me until I rewatched it when I was 18 or so. So for the first 17 years of my life, I really thought that was them. But when you listen to it on rewatch, you're like, ooh, that's not. Oh, that's not. Especially I've seen Sir Paul and Sir Ringo in concert now. I know what they sound like, and that was not them. But other than that, I know that they had there was like a little live action thing at the end where they look through a telescope or whatever, and they're like, the Blue Minis are coming.
In the vicinity of this theater?
Yes. But other than that, those two things, I would say probably not a lot. Like maybe they just, they're like, use our songs and we'll show up. But,
Well, from what I picked up from
Now here's the correct answer from Trey.
It's not fully correct because I didn't finish whatever research I was doing because I only watched it 3 hours ago. But what I gleaned was, yes, they had very little involvement.
Yes.
They had a 3-movie deal with the production company that worked on it, United Pictures, was it, or something?
I think it's something like that.
Yeah, and there was no stipulation that they couldn't do an animated film, and at the time, the Beatles were extremely busy, so they wouldn't have had any time to do anything else. So they just kind of made this.
Yeah. What were they doing? Wait, so this is 68? What album was that around?
God, I don't know the years.
Oh,
by
man, me
heart.
neither.
White came after it, but there was
White?
they did one more live action film as well after this, which I also have not seen. I've not seen every Beatles film. I've seen Hard Day's Night,
Oh,
and then
me
I've
too.
seen
it was
this.
probably Help then.
Help came second, I think.
Did it? Doesn't feel like it. That's a weird movie too.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like there's a part where George literally just takes a bite out of a cymbal. It's like, oh.
Ooh,
yeah.
I have a question then. What about so you know how all the Beatles get introduced in different ways? What was your favorite introduction? Because something that always stood out to me was George Harrison's his little introduction, and I was not a George Harrison fan. In terms of the Beatles, he was probably my fourth favorite out of 4. Probably still is, but they're all great. And I never knew what that song was.
It's from Revolver.
I know. Well, I hadn't listened to Revolver until I gained sentence at the age of 19, and I heard it and it immediately clicked, and I was like, this is the song that I've been looking for my entire life. So he's always been my favorite, and that song's always stuck with me. But Trey, what was your favorite introduction?
My favorite introduction.
And then, of course, we'll ask you too.
Well, I think Paul's was interesting because I don't know what the heck was happening. He just kind of came out of a room after all this like noise, and he's just like,
What's the matter, fellas? Blue meanies. It's my favorite
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten the chance to memorize everything, so you can go on with the quoting and the telling of details in case I mix something up.
Hey, fellas, look.
I found a hole in me bucket.
We're gonna talk about that later.
Yeah,
the
I
hole.
have probably seen this movie like I watch it like once a week at this point. It's gotten to the point I literally can sit there, put it on in the
Really?
background, and recite it as I'm watching it. Little niche fact. But as I am a Ringo fan, he's my favorite.
Yeah.
Ringo's is probably my favorite because it's just like at the time, like whenever the Beatles had a movie, they always played Ringo as the dummy, the fool. Even in the cartoon animated series, they made him like the dunce of the group. They do it with every single Beatles piece of media, and
They
I
should
think
have
it's
done it with George.
hilarious.
It would have made more sense.
Okay, well, Ringo's like the shortest,
The oldest.
drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. So I like how they kind of
Fun
like
fact.
kept that theme with the movie, and so his intro being all like, "I could have sworn I saw Yellow Submarine," and he was like freaking out, panicking, and just
Yeah.
I don't know, something about it.
Yeah, no, I'm a drummer too, so Ringo, cool. He plays a right-handed kit, but he's a left-handed player. That's why like all his grooves are really weird. He does like eighth note on the kick drum for a bunch of songs.
Ooh.
It's I don't know. It's fascinating, but that's the musical side, and we're talking about a movie here.
Yes.
There's a lot
Though
of
of
cool
course it
musical
really
aspects.
is. It really is an extended music video, as you were saying. And so I took it for that, but I did really like, the bantering, even though I wasn't aware, actually, that the Beatles had nothing to do with the voice work. That was the part I didn't get to. So when you said that, that surprised me.
Ooh.
Because I was getting some of their banter from the dialogue. And I mean, the dialogue was like, the audio levels were kind of all over the place and weird. So it was like, forgive for me for not noticing that was their real voice. That wasn't their real voices, but I didn't notice that at the time. But
Yeah.
I liked specifically the line that stuck out to me the most was they're passing by all the like weird monsters, and he's like, "Oh, one of them's a cyclops." And he's like, "No, it's got two eyes." He's like, "Oh, must be a boycyclops." And I was like, I like that. That was a good little bit of wordplay.
The monsters, the blue meanies, they were great. The chief blue meanie, he really got me. But I'll talk about the Nowhere Man, which is actually off of Rubber Soul, not Revolver or the Yellow Submarine album. It's off of Rubber Soul, the Nowhere Man, Jeremy Hillary Boob, PhD.
No, it's FD. They never pronounce PhD correctly.
Oh, well, I'm
It's FD.
fine. Fine. But the point is, I had an action figure of him when I was a child. I had an action figure of pretty much all of them.
They sold action figures of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad had them, and I stole them from him, obviously.
Wow.
Ironically, my Paul is missing his left hand. He lost his left hand.
You're
which is-
talking about like the really weird like 3D modeled ones that are like this big, right? Because there's
Maybe
the
they're,
Blue
like,
Meanie.
this big. I don't know. The
Something like
Jeremy
that.
was
It's
like
this
this
little
small.
ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because he's just a little.
He was
Nowhere
cute
man.
though. Point is, I really did enjoy his character. He was probably, if we can't pick a Beatle to be our favorite character, I would pick him to be my favorite character. And I like that he was a writer because as a writer, you talk about your drumming experience. I'll talk about my writing experience. I do feel like that's when I write, it's just I'm sitting in an empty white vacuum and have my typewriter with me.
That story, man, that you wrote, I read it.
You read it?
This is something else.
Oh.
We don't gotta get into
Yeah, we're
details
not.
about
That's not.
it.
This
but,
is not. I'll put it on my English class, but we'll
Yeah.
talk after those.
But yeah, I think Jeremy stuck out to me the most out of the main cast. But to be fair, it's a pretty small cast.
You don't like Captain Fred,
Yeah, he's there.
the mayor,
he's
the
just
mayor of
old.
Pepperland,
The mayor of Pepperland is like frozen the whole time. But like,
dude.
yeah,
That scared me so bad when they were just doing their little concert, and then the apple bonkers came in,
yeah,
the snapping Turks, the four-headed bulldog. The Dreadful Flying Glove.
Yeah, there you go.
And then the Chief Blue Meanie, I think, and Max.
What were the Brits on in this time period?
Too much.
You just mentioned these names. It's
Well,
just
this is what it is like in England. Like Ringo was walking through real life Liverpool, and he, looked like that.
Yeah,
which
it looks
is
like all these cutouts of really
Yeah.
scuffed black and white photos.
Which is how I feel about
I've been there.
when I'm walking on campus. Campus is really quiet on a Saturday evening, and it's only Friday morning. There's no one here after Thursday. It's crazy. I do feel like Ringo, and I feel like there's a yellow submarine watching me. And it's just a cop car because they patrol on the weekend.
Oh, I forgot about that.
They do.
A yellow cop car.
It's
That would just be a
Blue?
taxi.
Yeah, you're right. And what does that say about our society? Anyway,
much.
What was your next question?
what was your next
Now we
question?
can move
To be
on.
honest, we got on the topic of taxis. I don't know. Oh, it was the visuals and attached to the music. How well did you think it matched?
Very well. That whole George Harrison thing, like to talk about before, that was just amazing, and it really stuck with me. I was a child, and I liked bright and flashing colors, but I feel like that does say something that even a child with no sentience remembers your movie. You're doing something right.
You weren't even self-aware as a child. You didn't look at yourself and
Yeah, what age
recognize
did
who you were. When
You got
very,
consciousness.
very young age. I got consciousness. Oof, around the 8th grade, maybe the 6th grade. I don't know. I don't want to go too off topic, but the first real memory I have is I would crawl behind my couch and I would just sit there because I was a weird kid. And I remember thinking to myself, I will remember this moment forever, and I still do.
I remember sitting in this little cubby, where we kept the trash can.
Oh my god.
In your house?
Yeah, that's where we keep the potatoes now.
Oh,
You know.
okay.
Makes sense. But on the topic of visuals, I really liked it. I was at first, of course, the first thing going off in my mind was this is those little animated segments Monty Python does. Same time period, makes sense. But I was also starting to realize a lot of sections of this must have had at least some direct inspiration on a lot of things. For one, I don't know if any of you have seen the Teen Titans original animated series, not Go.
From
Yeah.
2003?
Yeah.
I grew
The
up
better
on that.
one?
Yeah, the better one. But all the both the Mad Mod episodes, I thought it was riffing off of Monty Python because I hadn't seen this movie yet. And then I watched this movie and I was like, oh, that art style, his outfit, everything they're doing is definitely just a big reference to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I also got that with Squidward in
SpongeBob.
yeah, in that episode where he goes to nowhere. That was definitely the Nowhere Man segment and the
Yeah.
holes
Yes,
they go
yes,
through
yes.
and all that. And so the visuals were striking enough, obviously, that they were an inspiration to a lot of stuff we still recognize today. And I think that's when you've scored on the visual spectrum, because obviously it was kind of wacky looking, but it was a good kind of wacky. I liked kind of the vibe that came out of that.
Yeah.
I don't know, something about the different segments where they bring in the songs and they start singing. Those visuals just really stick out to me, especially Nowhere Man. That's one of my favorite musical scenes in the entire movie, just because they're just walking through this nowhere land, and it doesn't make sense when you watch it, but it just feels good watching it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
It really did feel like they were kind of ripping into him. I mean, what did he do to them? Why are they suddenly
Well, they're
their
British.
songs,
They can't be happy about anything.
It kind of felt like something the Oompa Loompas would have sung to one of the kids at the chocolate factory. This dude's just down on his luck, and you've got these British people coming and singing about how his life sucks. And
After he
does,
fixed their motor for him.
Exactly.
What?
He fixes the motor, and then they make fun of him. So at the very least, it was Ringo, right, who's
Takes
pity on him.
Well, because Ringo.
Well, yeah, because
can-
Ringo is
Yeah.
he's
Yeah,
He's Ringo.
but he's the main character of all of them, and it makes sense because Yellow Submarine's his song. So,
Mhm.
yes. it is.
but yeah, I just found that funny. But I really did like that segment a lot.
What do you, Angela, think of the storyline in this movie? Because upon rewatch, you know what? No. What do you think of the storyline in this movie? You've seen it once a week for
Yeah, pretty much.
however many years. Do
So you could really dissect what happens.
Oh, 1000%. I don't know. It's kind of, this was their big, obviously pre-70s, and this is when they were getting into the whole peace and love thing. And so it was
Yeah.
kind of just fighting evil and meanness with peace and love, and then it makes the whole world happy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I like thinking of the blue meanies as that metaphor for meanness, obviously. But I don't know, that's why Chief Blue Meanie will forever be like one of my top 3 favorite characters in that movie because of the character development, especially at the end with Jeremy. Like, bloom, 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 and freaks out, and he's like, wait, this is kind of like chill.
And he learns to say yes instead of no to everything.
Yes, Max, let us go.
Yes, it's the best word.
Yes.
Except if
pretty good band too.
Yeah. Except in a lot of contexts where maybe yes is not the right answer to but we'll ignore that. Yeah. We'll ignore
it's a children's movie, Trey. It's a children's movie.
It's a children's movie. You assign meaning to a word. I mean, that's literally what we do for everything. But anyways, yeah, I really liked the Blue Meanies aspect. I just thought the storyline, it was much more action heavy than I'd ever expect a Beatles movie to get.
Yeah.
And it kind of made sense to me that the Beatles wouldn't have had a lot of involvement with it because thinking about Hard Day's Night, that movie just kind of goes along with whatever's happening. And that makes sense to me because it's like they're just trying to like play their songs and be in a band. But then this movie, they're like saving an alternate dimension from,
Pepperland.
It's kind of like that.
A bunch of little
Help,
Thanoses.
From the Apple Bonkers.
Yeah, and the Snapping Turks and all that.
And the Four-Headed Bulldog.
The Help movie is kind of like alongside the same like action-filled thing because the whole premises of that movie is that Ringo...
That ring.
Yeah, the ring, the sacrificial ring. He gets gifted this ring by like a fan or something like that, and he's like, "Oh, I love my rings. I'm gonna wear this ring." And then it doesn't come off, and it ends up being this whole like sacrificial ring, and now he has to get sacrificed to this tribe. And there's again a lot of chaos in between, like the actual crucial points of the movie, like Yellow Submarine. So I don't know. I think it's just like their vibe. That's just pure chaos. Also, it was the '60s, and we know what happened in the '60s.
And he sleeps in the bed upside down when they try to kidnap him.
Oh yeah.
They pull the sheets up, and it's his toes.
Oh.
Which inspired me to, again, I watched that when I was a young child. It inspired me to sleep in the bed upside down for like a week.
I would just sleep in the bed upside down just because, sometimes you just need to change things up.
I've done it a few times. It's nice.
Yeah.
But I'm a big, I can't sleep on my, I'm a side sleeper, but I can't sleep on my left side. So when you turn your thing, it turns into a whole thing. And now it's like, well, I can't sleep on my left side, but now my right side is facing not the wall. And I like to sleep facing the wall. It's a whole thing, so that's why I stopped.
Sounds niche.
It's kind of niche, but we're not talking about sleeping, we're talking about a movie. And movies don't make me sleep. That's why this is my major.
Yeah. Well, what I find to be the most interesting part about all this, for one, the first episode we did.
Did you watch it?
No, I have not.
Oh, you're supposed to say
yes. That episode,
I'm sorry.
as of now,
yes.
has like 2 views on it, so maybe we could get some more traction on it. But anyways,
go watch the podcast, guys.
Yes,
if you're
watching this, watch it. But what I found so interesting is the juxtaposition between this movie and then last week we watched The Usual Suspects, and we're going all into the writing and all the plot aspects. And then you have this movie, and it's like, oh, in writing and plot, you don't exactly have much to talk about. It just kind of happens, and then there's music.
Mean people, conflict, resolution, perfect. That's how it was written.
Yeah, that's pretty much what my script writing class was.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't write this exact story, you're just not writing a story right.
Mm-hmm. You gotta be inspired by the Beatles,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we have the litmus test. Usual Suspects, and then the Beatles. Write a story either super convoluted or very straightforward, and you profit. Mm-hmm. Nothing in between.
Nothing. Okay, nothing in between.
Until our 3rd week, and then we pick a in between movie with story, but also straightforward, and then we go. But you can write in between.
Next week you should watch The Holy Mountain.
Yes.
All right.
I mean, I don't know what that is, so that works because I've never seen that.
Well, maybe we'll have Jay on as a guest for next episode.
Then who will direct?
We'll find
I will
out.
not be a guest. I'll just direct a film for you to watch. And after you watch that film, you probably will not want to watch films anymore.
Oh.
Oh.
Is it that bad?
Define bad.
Uh-oh.
Oh, great. Okay, well, before we get down that, I think we kind of ran through that question. Since we were talking about visuals and plot and all that.
Yes.
Is there anything else? Probably something maybe about the music that you
Well,
wanted to ask.
I don't know. Like I kind of asked, like the visuals and the music and everything, but
What's your favorite song?
in the movie?
Yeah.
Ugh, I don't know. Ever since I was a kid and I started watching it, when I'm 64, that entire scene with the Sea of Time and all of that is forever one of my favorite
Reminds me of
musical
Spencer Trella.
scenes.
God, I need a moment.
Oh.
We'll give him that.
Yeah, well, take your little 5.
I just miss him so much.
Okay, that was your moment. You get to stop. All right. So, I guess I would say Nowhere Man was probably my favorite.
Yeah, that's another really good one.
Yeah, but
Eleanor Rigby too.
Eleanor Rigby. I wasn't expecting
That
them
was
to
my answer.
pull that.
Oh,
That was my answer.
I'm
Oh,
so
right.
sorry.
Eleanor Rigby. Because that's the scene that I really remember, however many years since I first watched it. It was just creepy. And I was like, what is this song? And I asked my dad, and he was like, I don't know. And I was like, how do you not know? You're the guy who put me onto the Beatles. But then I found it.
Yeah.
And I've listened to it, probably twice a week for 2 or so years now.
Yeah.
See, what's nice about this movie too is is before all like the remastered versions of these songs came out, and they have like that nice crunch to them that like just it digs into my brain fold, and it's
Yes,
this is the good one.
And those versions, they really sound like the instruments are playing together. The thing I don't like
Exactly.
about a lot of the remasters, which is what I've been like listening to on like Spotify and stuff, because that's really all you can find.
Unfortunately.
It all just sounds like they took each instrument. It's in a separate studio space. It just doesn't sound like it's the Beatles playing together. It's a different vibe. But I think the other notable thing is there's definitely a tangible difference between the songs. I know they did write songs for this movie, but then they also had several that were not written for it. And I think while I don't know exactly which ones they are, there's definitely some that feel like they fit more with the story, and others that are more like, this is just a vibe check for this setting. Like Eleanor Rigby is just a vibe check for, I guess,
and it
just
passes
England.
the vibe check.
It
Like
does
all
pass
It's
the
an
vibe
the
check.
little
amazing
animations,
song.
especially the soccer scene.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my god.
The soccer scene. That
I
teardrop
always- yeah.
guy, girl,
Yeah.
helmet
That's Eleanor
thing.
Rigby.
That's her?
That's
That's her?
supposed to be her.
That's supposed to be her.
There's
I thought she'd like have no face because she keeps it in
by
a
the
jar by the door, but
yeah.
oh, I guess she does.
There's I got this like hoodie shirt from I think it was Old Glory a year or two ago, and it has that entire scene with Eleanor Rigby and the helmet on it. So that's
Why is she wearing a helmet?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Again,
Those
it's one of those
Beatles-
niche things.
Those Beatles, they're
Sometimes
geniuses.
You just don't want to get your head hit.
Yeah.
It'll hurt.
Well, maybe when you're playing soccer and she doesn't want to get kicked in the head, it's a whole thing. It's
Yeah.
Exactly.
We shouldn't ask.
She's crying from the trauma of seeing the ball fly around.
Seeing John and George or Paul. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You better get it right.
Sorry.
See, like the fun thing to do is look at a different soccer player every time you watch it, because every one of them moves differently, but like you just don't know how.
Well, it really looked like kind of like that Rankin Bass, Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, where it's like mostly just complete rotoscoping, like real actors like
Yeah.
acting it out on like sound stages, but then some of it is like just real people with filters put over them. It's like the equivalent of just if you use one of those Snapchat cartoon filters on a regular person. But it kind of added to the idea that every sequence was a different art style, and obviously that sequence was meant to be the most like real life. So they leaned more into, using real pictures or rotoscoping people, and the fact that it's Eleanor Rigby and it's all gray and it's sad. It helps. It works.
Come to think of it, hot take, I think that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was one of those like filler songs.
I think so too.
It's a good song,
Was
though.
it
It is a really good song.
Was it written for this?
No, it's off
I
of the Sgt. Pepper album.
Yeah, and that came like alongside or a little after the movie came out.
Unless that whole album was a big psyop for the movie, I don't think it was for because Sgt. Pepper, they're the guys that aren't. That was the one thing that confused me. I was like, so Sgt. Pepper isn't the Beatles, but they disguise as them, but they're it's a whole thing. I need to grow up. That was from the 4-year-old watching. The 18-year-old me watched it. I was like, oh, I get this now.
Yeah.
The timeline of Beatles release schedules, especially toward the end, I
still don't
know
know
if
it.
it could be understood. They were making so much stuff, and it was all like interweaving. I don't know if we can come to understand.
I still don't know what comes first, Let It Be or the Abbey Road. I still don't know what came first.
Abbey
I don't
Road.
know.
Abbey Road and then Let It Be.
That's
Yeah.
why we have you here.
But then Abbey Road was their like last thing that they recorded.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I want to say Let It Be was just like a bunch of songs they had but just didn't. No, they had the Let It Be album. They just never released it until, around the
Okay.
breakup time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll have beards, except for Ringo. Let's all grow beards and not tell Ringo.
They always exclude Ringo.
Yeah, no, he
Man,
never
why
gets
the
to be
hate?
included.
Well, he's got the last laugh in terms of being included in living.
They even like made fun of him in the Sonic 3 movie. There was like one.
Oh,
How does he
yeah.
catch a
And
stray in
the other
Sonic
one.
3?
So there's a scene in Sonic 3 where Sonic is crossing a crosswalk and he starts naming the Beatles, and then he gets to Ringo and just goes, and the other one. Yeah. I went and saw it with my friends, and all of them know that I'm like the fattest Beatles fan, and I love Ringo. So they all stared at me and they're like, "How'd that make you feel, Ange?" I'm like, it stings a little. I'm not gonna lie.
Who are they? Who is Sonic? This
The
little
hedgehog.
Hedgehog.
Yeah.
No, Sonic
To
is
say
big.
that Ringo is just the other one.
I think
like-
Sonic the Hedgehog and the Beatles have had the same cultural impact on society.
It's a weird butterfly effect when
Yeah.
you think about it.
Yeah.
It is a weird
Well,
world
Eggman
we
is
live
based
in.
off of that one song, "I Am the Walrus." Sorry, it's like top 5 Beatles songs.
Which
I don't
was
know why I forgot it.
also, it was referenced in the Yellow Submarine. I don't know if you caught the line.
Probably.
Is that
didn't.
actually true? Or
Well,
is that just being-
Eggman is
really?
the Eggman, and he has the John Lennon sunglasses. Or I guess Dr. Robotnik is more based off John Lennon than Eggman, because Eggman nowadays is a whole different beast. His grandson.
Wow. I did not know. Okay. Well, I learned something new. I learned a lot of new things. I am not clearly as educated in Beatles lore as you two are.
Yeah.
I did not grow up with this movie. I did grow up with Beatles songs, but it was I didn't watch like their movies or like much of the extended media. When it came to a lot of the stuff in their later albums, it was just kind of a mystery to me. Like they were just on psychedelics and just coming up with stuff. I didn't exactly know what it was, but
Mm-hmm.
this was an educational experience seeing this movie because it kind of put a little bit of that into context. I didn't know what any of the Sgt. Pepper stuff was. Like I was like, they're naming a lot of random characters in these songs, and it doesn't seem like I'm getting all the context here. But it was either as like a part of their Beatles cinematic universe, or maybe it was just a coincidence that they decided for the movie to use these elements of these songs. Because the way I heard it, the screenwriting for this movie was just done around sort of taking Yellow Submarine and some other songs and just saying like, what's the lore here and how can we make it into a movie?
Exactly.
And that's kind of how they came up with this. But it definitely came out to something with a very Roald Dahl feel to it. And I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it as like really a time capsule as well. But that sort of sums up my thoughts. Did you have any more questions you wanted to share as our guest?
Not really. I think we covered a good amount of things, so.
Well, last episode, Spencer's final question was about ratings. So I feel like
Oh yeah.
we can go left to right here, or
According to
right
the
to
camera, or
left?
according to how we're sitting.
according to the camera, it's left to right.
Okay, so I will go
starting
first.
with you. Yeah.
I will give the Beatles Yellow Submarine a overall an 8 out of 10. I think it's very much a very visually appealing movie, sonically appealing movie. But the story is not like we're not reinventing the wheel on the story here. Good wins, evil loses. We all learn a lesson.
Valid.
And who needs gloves when you have love?
True.
Exactly.
That's the lesson.
So obviously, this being my all-time favorite movie, as to why I have a tattoo of it, solid 10 out of 10, because I am very much used to the Beatles' way of telling stories, Hard Day's Night and Help, and just the pure chaos of everything they make. And I just love it. I love the chaos. As a maximalist, I'm so digging those things every time I see something of that sort. So, yeah, solid 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, before I give a number to it, because I don't think in my head I've even Whoops. But I don't even think in my head I've decided what my number will be. But I'm just gonna say this much. I do know, for instance, the only comparable celebrity at the time who was putting out this kind of stuff was like Elvis with all of his movies. But now I think about it in the modern context of like when Taylor Swift randomly cameos in like some feature film, gets freaking shoved under a car wheel and dies in the first 5 minutes of whatever that movie was. I forget the name of it.
Oh, was that the same one Justin Bieber died? Was that the same movie?
I don't think so.
Oh, there was a movie where he died.
The overall context being, nowadays celebrities and musicians will kind of just throw themselves at projects to be like, hey guys, I exist, here's my new album, come watch it. But what the Beatles were doing was like trend setting. This movie's art style, yeah, I mean, obviously the Beatles didn't make the art style, but they got the ball rolling on this. This was a trend setting movie for a lot of like animated content going forward in the next decades. Obviously all of their music made the modern pop music industry. So for that alone, in terms of its historical cultural impact cinematically and musically, I'd give it a 9. As for what I think of it as a film on its own, I'd give it like probably a 7. Just because like this is not the kind of thing, and I know you grew up with it, and when you grow up with something, you watch it again and again. That's my Spider-Man 2 and that's my Incredibles. Yep. But
yeah, The Incredibles is good.
Yeah. But for me, like, I'll probably revisit this at some point, just, or especially, like, watching scenes as basically music videos. I think it's really cool. But as a movie, obviously, as Spencer said, the plot was a little light. The music carried, sometimes was a little filler. But I really liked the dynamics. I think the banter was probably the strongest element behind the animation and the music.
Yeah.
And I am willing to watch more of the Beatles verse,
Do not watch the Peter Jackson Get Back documentary. It's like 2.5 hours, 3 episodes.
I've watched some of it, but I didn't finish it. It's too long.
I've yet to meet a person who has finished it. I think it's too much of a commitment.
Yeah,
it's more of it's not like an actual documentary or like
it's not. It's
or
just
a piece of energy. It's just a record of information.
It is, yes. It is recorded footage of them in the studio for 30 or so days, however many days it was, and doesn't need to be 2.5 hours long. That's just my final thing. I wanted to get that out there before we ended the episode.
Yeah. Well, maybe somebody will come by who's also really into the Beatles and tell us to watch that, and you'll have to be prepared for that fact. But,
That's
because we can't say no.
It's like 5.5 hours plus that we'll have to invest for one episode.
Maybe we will say no.
Maybe we will say no.
If it
But
makes you feel better, I haven't even watched it, so.
It does make me feel better. But I think we've learned from the movie is say yes, and all you need is love, and Eleanor Rigby, and
Billy Shears, and
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Yeah. And the Nowhere Man and Jeremy.
Hillary, Fida.
Yes.
Well, that's the episode. That's put that on my list. And I said Spencer last episode that at the end of every episode I was gonna go. Not like that's not like a gun getting cocked. That's the pen on the paper. I'm checking the movie off my list because I've seen it. So thank you for bringing Yellow Submarine to us.
No problem.
Angela, thank you for being on the episode, and hope you guys enjoyed that, found it informative, and you can go listen to the Beatles now. We're not going to play it or we're going to get copyright striked. So have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.